Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever you are in the world. I know we have been away for a while. You know how it goes with summer vacations and family and all the fun that we have to indulge and deal with during summertime. But we're back and we're glad to be back. And today's episode, I'm so excited about it because it caught my eye the minute I received a newsletter from our guest talking about the importance of translation and interpretation. So I was sitting there thinking, that is a quite interesting topic because obviously when we hear translation, we hear interpretation. It has to do, both of those have to do with communication. And as we all know, communication is the backbone of any interaction, enabling the exchange of ideas, information, and emotions. We do know that is quite difficult the way it is when we communicate with someone else in our own language. And we can never say that we master communication. We can be better as it is a work in progress. And when it comes to cross cultural communication, it becomes more complex just for the fact that there is a difference in languages, norms, values, and perception. And this complexity is particularly evident or become evident in document where you have to translate word by word or you have to convey emotion through your translation. So this is a fascinating subject to me. This is why we have our guest today, and he will walk us through the complexities of this topic. And of course, we have my beautiful co-host Maria with us that will also chip in and help us navigate through this process. So good afternoon. Oh, do we still have morning or good afternoon, Philip?
Good afternoon. No, no. It's afternoon here, whatever it is for all of the visitors, for all of the guests.
Okay, well, I am intrigued and I received like I said, I received your newsletter and it talked about the fact that there are about 42 million Hispanic living in the United States and their first language is Spanish and they speak it at home. And then you went on talking about how there are about 455 million Latinos in Latin America that we interact with on perhaps sometimes on daily basis, and the translation interpretation becomes so complex. So we'll
Yeah.
start with that. We're not going to focus on Latin America, but this is just an example that caught my eye and use your newsletter. So what do you see out there in this world, Philip?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Well, first of all, my name is Philip Auerbach. My company conveniently is called Auerbach International. And as far as I know, we're the oldest language agency in the country, in the US, under the same ownership. Others have come and gone and been bought and sold, but we're still here, and that's why I'm gray, and that's perfectly fine. So some minor definitions and statistics first, if you don't mind. There are around at least 64 million Latinos in this country, but around 42 million speak Spanish at home, making the US the second largest Spanish market in the world after Mexico. And there are another 455 Spanish speakers in Latin America. So that in itself is an enormous market, plus another, say, 213 million Portuguese speakers in Brazil and so forth. So translating and interpreting is a very critical art. It's not, and it's not mechanical at all. It has to be done very, very precisely. Let me change that. Translation can be done, or it can be done correctly. And to be done, it can be done through a lot of software programs such as Google Translate and other apps that people can find online. But in most cases, they will make mistakes. And the issue is whether you want your communication, whether you want your presentation, whether you want your image, your website, your company reputation to radiate excellence and accuracy, or whether you want it to be second rate, basically. And if your communications have mistakes, what does that say to your clients or to your prospects about your company? So we have been doing the process correctly, accurately, with near 100% accuracy for all of our 33 years, actually. And just to clarify, translation is any written communication, and interpreting is any communication. And most people so
I have a question there.
yes.
35 years ago, I started my career as a translator, and there were many companies. And I remember back in the day, and I'm giving away my age here. We started out sending out the hard copies, then we went to faxing, and then we went to floppy disk sending, and then we went to the modems where they would go, and you'd have to ask. And I noticed that the machine translation was in its infancy and it didn't work. You couldn't really get anything out of it. Nowadays, that you've got the subtleties that are coming through with AI, it's surprising how far we've come. So what would you say to people who think, what's the difference between a human being doing the editing or the translation and an AI model that is getting better every time? What would you say to that?
It depends on the language, and it depends on the AI platform that you use. In general, Spanish translation by AI is very good, but it's absolutely not perfect. My favorite example of this is, well, let me give you an example, but I'd like to first give you 3 or 4 reasons why AI is not accurate. So AI does not convert measurements. So if you say, for example, that something is 3 miles, it will translate 3 miles. It does not convert to kilometers. Okay. AI absolutely does no cultural adaptation at all. So if you have a sentence, if you put in a sentence, we here in Peru like to play football, it will translate, we here in Peru like to play football, which is not but to Americans, football is American football, and what they mean is soccer, what we would call soccer. So it does not make that kind of distinction. AI does not do some expressions very well. My favorite example of this is if you put in the sentence, I'm on the fence about if I'm going to come to your party on Saturday night. It will translate literally, I am on top of the fence about if to come to your party on Saturday night. And that's not what it means. The expression means I'm undecided. So, and mostly AI absolutely does no cultural adaptation. And this is most critical where humans come in, where human translators are very critical. That there are many words that do not translate properly from one language to another, but either from English or from languages into English. Again, expressions, just the sense of what something means. And the example I wanted to give you is that we translated a marketing book called Cracking the Celebrity Code by the world's #1 branding expert. His name is Ray Perez. And in the beginning of his book, he did an introduction, and there was a sentence, okay, now are you ready to rock and roll? And it translated into Spanish as, ¿Eres listo para el rock and roll? Which makes no sense because Spanish does not have the expression rock and roll. What it means is, are you ready to get started? Are you ready to plunge in? So again, AI does not do that. And this is in Spanish, which is the best, I should say the best language, meaning the most examples from AI. When you get into other languages like East European languages, Czech, Hungarian, Polish, or you get into Asian languages such as Japanese or Korean or even Arabic or the Scandinavian language or even German, and Portuguese, again, many, many mistakes. And you absolutely, you can do the process or you can do the process correctly. And we absolutely always, when we do projects, do a combination of AI where possible, but absolutely always then edited by a master's level linguist who has at least 10 years ongoing experience in the field, perhaps as you did. 10 years ongoing experience, only goes into to his or her native language, and absolutely is matched to the subject specialty of the project. So wine vocabulary is very different from real estate vocabulary, is very different from chemistry vocabulary. Each field, each industry has its own terminology, and it's very critical to, be able to speak, be able to translate in that terminology to or from English or any other combination. So, for example, we've done projects from Italian to Arabic, and that's a very unusual combination. And one of the nice kudos that we got, actually, this was for a Sicilian tourist bureau, and they were very complimentary to us because they said that the way we translated Catholic terms, Catholic concepts into Arabic was very sensitive both to the Catholics and to the Muslims. And again, this is very critical. This is part of cultural adaptation. You can call it acculturation or cultural adaptation that AI translations alone absolutely cannot do.
Fascinating.
And this is a big job, definitely, Philip, from what you're saying, to ensure that the translated message is culturally appropriate and
Yes.
retains its intended impact. One must have that linguistic understanding or linguistic accuracy, but also have understanding of cultural context. Otherwise, it won't work.
Absolutely.
So AI, if anybody's depending on AI, Philip here is telling us it can be a tool, but not 100% a tool that you can utilize when it comes to translating or doing interpretation of complex documents. And if you're doing it for, I read on your information that you work with 120 languages, so it becomes even more complex.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, again, AI is very good to get the gist of what something says, the sense of what something says, and it's fine for that purpose. But again, if you're looking for precision, if you're looking for accuracy, if you're looking to convey a positive image of expertise and knowledge in your field, then using AI to translate your content is not. It's a total mismatch. You're saying that you have excellence and precision in your product and service, but you portray that your words that you're using, either spoken translation or written translation or spoken interpretation, are not matching the image that you're saying.
Yeah, it's like seeing spelling mistakes when people are marketing. You think, man, if that got through, what does it say about the quality of their product or service? I know it's definitely a turnoff for me when I see spelling mistakes. And once in a while, if I see a sign that's not translated correctly, like if I was at a Planet Fitness and they had translated something into English, but it was obviously worded as if it were in Spanish. And so I went to them, I'm like, you might want to change that sign. They didn't really care, but it was like, it's not 100%. It kind of gives the wrong image, right?
You and I both edit menus and edit billboards. Yes.
Yeah.
Make sure that they are correct. Yes.
It's like, hey, free editing here if you want. So.
Well, earlier today I was okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I must admit publicly, and this is a terrible embarrassment, because the most recent newsletter we did just last week started with two statistics that I mentioned at the very beginning. The U.S. has 42 million Latinos who speak Spanish at home, And the original was, and Latin America has 455 million Spanish speakers in Latin America. And somehow when we put it through our email blast system, the word million dropped, and it became,
Yes.
and Latin America has 455 Spanish speakers. Like, oh my God.
Yes, I saw that, and I said, I am sure that it just was just overlooked, but they meant 455 millions. And the example that you mentioned or you stated on your letter, I mean, all of them were really accurate when it comes to translating word to words from one language to another. So I am saying, after I read that, I'm thinking, wow, the translation part is huge when it comes to communicating your ideas to another person from a different backgrounds. So earlier, before you came in, I was just mentioning to Maria about a podcast I was listening to earlier this morning about relationships. And I'm thinking, I heard what the speaker said, and I said, I am going to ask Philip this question, and that is communicating or masculine communication style versus feminine communication style, and how they translate when it comes to translating documents or books or whatever your project is.
Okay, that's a wonderful question, and just I'm sorry, just to finish the circle. This mistake that I mentioned to you about 455, I proofread it. Our marketing manager proofread it. Neither of us caught it, but the email blast system did it. So this is, again, all the best intentions, and then machines take over and mess up everything. So anyway, thank you for still hosting me. But so in answer to your question, I like to tell people that we translate and interpret 120 languages, but we absolutely do not translate into male or female. That's simply impossible. And part of it is, again, translating is written, interpreting is spoken communication. The idea is to convey the sense of what is spoken, not word for word, but the concept for concept of what is spoken or stated. And if a woman is speaking in, feminine words like, nourishing or, nourishing or supporting, or we really value you. Again, these are more emotional feminine words that men would not say as often. Then, of course, the linguist would convey that accurately, because those are real words, and that's fine. And if a man is saying and says, what you did is totally wrong, and this is, you totally screwed up the project. That's the way that an American would speak, or perhaps a German would speak. And again, the linguist's responsibility is to be faithful to the intent and the tone of the source language. So yes, it would be conveyed as accurately and as directly as possible. Now, it can be, it depends who the audience is and the purpose. So I like to give another example of, we got a brochure many, many years ago. And the brochure said something to the effect, and this was from a company in Mississippi that makes conveyor belts for mines to take the ore from the bottom of a mine to the top. And they had a brochure which they were sending to Europeans, and it said something to the effect of, our company is absolutely the best in the world, and no one else does what we do as well as we do. Now, we could have translated that directly. This is not male or female. This is just the intent. It sounds very masculine in that it's very assertive, and the clients actually were male, no surprise. But we said immediately that if we translate this directly, it will absolutely fail. It will absolutely bomb out, because Europeans do not speak this way. Europeans need to be much more mindful of, we'll call it softening the language to make it more appropriate, because the language, the way I said it, our product is absolutely the best in the world and no one else does it as well as we do. That to Europeans sounds totally arrogant. And if you're totally arrogant, you're not going to succeed, no matter how good your words are, no matter how good your translating or interpreting is. So when we come in a situation like that, call it male, female, we call it making the client shine. We would deliberately change the words to make the client shine. So we would tone it down. We would not say deliberately, we would not directly say, we're absolutely the best company in the world, because it doesn't matter how good the brochure is, the website is, anything else, it absolutely would be a total turnoff. So instead we would say, for example, we are one of the best in the world. We are considered among the top in our field. So again, the same general concept, but toning down the words to ensure that the message resonates with the target audience.
So that's the human element, being able to adjust the cultural piece. I have a question. This reminded me, I don't know if you've seen, well, the movies always show it, where like Shogun, I was just watching Shogun on HBO, that James Clavell famous novel, where they're in medieval Japan and he's translating back and forth from the English protagonist to the Japanese overlord, and the Englishman always says things that are very brash, and the interpreter, Mariko-sama, she's like, you can see the subtitles, and she's totally being very much more diplomatic in the way that. Do your interpreters filter as well when they're doing real-time interpreting?
That's a wonderful question. I'm laughing because
that's a really good question.
The Japanese language, I majored in Japanese in college, so I know a lot about Japanese and I still speak it, sort of. Korean is very similar and Chinese is less so, but in Japanese, there are definite words that women use and definite words that men use, and endings at the end of words. Like if I'm saying, I'm going to come tomorrow, and a man would end the sentence saying yo, and a woman would end the sentence saying wa. And it's just wa, it's a little softer than yo. So this is just even cultural that way. So so some of it is, again, some of it is cultural and some of it is the acculturation. But ideally, we should not do what Mariko did in Shogun. First of all, let me amend that for a moment. Most of what we do is we translate for business and technical subjects. So when we translate for books or when we translate for movies, for example, then there different rules apply, because normally translating and interpreting should be as faithful as possible to the intent of the speaker, to the intent of the writer. And that is the case with business. But when we're dealing with books, when we're dealing with movies, when we're dealing with something, even videos, as you're saying, then the translators would take a little more liberty and do a lot more acculturation to make it resonate with the target audience. So again, it depends what we're doing. I'll give you another wonderful example. This is not acculturated, but many years ago, there was a Mexican movie. In English, it was called Like Water for Chocolate. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
And it was translated literally into English from the Spanish. Como
agua para chocolate.
Chocolates, thank you. So it was translated deliberately from Spanish into English as like water for chocolate. Well, that's not what it means. That means nothing in English. What it means in Spanish is sexual, arising to sexual passion. arising to a point of, sexual passion. And that, water for chocolate means absolutely nothing in English. So the movie makers could have created a totally different title, but they chose not to. And people, and again, that's a decision. That's fine. But if it were, my choice, I would have certainly suggested to the producers, the directors, that when you do it in English or other languages, let's come up with an idiom, let's come up with an image that resonates, that has the same Spanish connotation.
I have like, we're having a great time, Philip, and I'm looking at the time here. I'm just gonna ask a last question, perhaps, and that relates to translating emotion. And I know with 120 languages in play, have you ever faced challenges in finding the right words to convey emotions during translations? And I kind of think of an example for the Japanese concept of wabi sabi, which obviously embodies deep appreciation for the beauty and imperfection and transience, a sentiment that does not have a direct equivalent in many languages, not just English.
Right.
And I know, for example, as an Arabic speaker, there are some words, because of the alphabet that we have, there are some words that actually don't have a translation in English. How do you deal with that, or challenges you're facing when you translating emotions?
It's not easy, and frankly, a lot is lost in translation. You often have to do like one word, or especially in interpreting, where again, interpreting is speaking. Someone's giving a presentation, you don't have time to say, well, it really means this instead of that. So you generally give one word, but you lose the sense of you lose the emotion. So for example, there's a word in Portuguese, fofoca, which basically means gossiping about the lives of others, often with a tone of speculation or intrigue. So if we had to translate it, we'd probably just say gossiping. Again, it loses the nuance, it loses the sense. But if we're dealing with a book, then we have more time to explain, like as an image of what it's talking about. If we're dealing with a brochure, with a manual, with a video for business, if you're dealing with a business conversation, or dealing with a negotiation, you have to be very quick and just more or less say the closest English word possible, or the closest target language word possible, and you lose something. There are words in every language that do not convey from that language into other languages, and again, in this case, from English into other languages. As I'm sure you're aware, in Eskimo languages, there are like 20 words for snow, depending on the texture and how it's falling and all of that. And in English, it's snow or slush or whatever, snowflakes, whatever, but nothing that descriptive.
Black ice. I know, because I'm from Philadelphia.
Well, I am having a wonderful time here, Philip, and then I believe we're running out of time. I guess, Maria, do you have any questions before we end the session?
No, I just like the idea that, when it comes to written translation, the rules might be a little different, where you can give more context. When it comes to real-time interpretation, you should probably stick to the real intent and convey the message as given, is what I'm taking away also.
Good point. Philip, where can people find you?
Our website is auerbach-intl.com, auerbach-intl.com. And that will give, on the bottom of our website, we've got our address, our phone numbers, contact information, all of that. People can feel free to, people can email translations, plural translations, at auerbach-intl.com. Put in the subject line "for me," it will get to me. And our phone numbers that you can also call me if you want to discuss projects. We have an office in California and an office in Philadelphia. Both numbers reach all of our staff. If everyone has an extension. So again, on our website, you'll have the phone numbers.
We're so grateful and thankful for your presence today. And seriously, I did not think of the importance of translation before until I received your newsletter, and that's why we're here today to explain it further and to open up minds to, hey, if you're planning to enter the global market, and you don't even have to be going and doing business in another country, because the world is here. And if you are planning, the world is here, and if you're planning to target an audience, particular audience, whether that is indigenous or ethnic, certain ethnicity, you must have the right language that start with someone who understands in effective communication, not just effective communication in local language, but in the language of the customer they're targeting. Am I correct?
That is very correct. Yes. It's important to resonate the context as much as possible, and never to do word for word, which is what AI solutions do. And they will not convey the same sense. So again, you can have it done, or you can have it done correctly, as in anything else. So if you want to resonate with your audience, it's worth a little bit more to have it done correctly.
All right, well, you heard it. Contact Philip and his staff. They will help you anywhere in the world. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
being with you. Thank you.
Thanks.